What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily podcast powered by Andrade and Levine Accident Attorneys. The bank is open. We got a big episode today. A lot to cover recruiting-wise. Of course, I will be dropping the bank and talking to sources, give you the latest on kind of where the class is, guys that are picking up momentum, guys that are losing momentum, where we're looking at in terms of last week's visits, the week coming up. We're on our last official visit weekend, man. So a lot of action ahead, and then it's closing time, at least for the summer. So a lot to get into. Plus, we are going to interview Wyatt Wheeler. Wyatt Wheeler is the beat writer over there in Southwest Missouri that has covered Jackson Cantwell, #1 overall player in the country since he was a kid. He's got a lot of great insight into Jackson Cantwell. So looking forward to talking to him. First, some folks I'm always looking forward to talking about. That is Andrade and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Andrade and Levine. Pete, let's go.
Good morning, D.
Morning. Trey Moore says Pete's putting the shot collar on Honey real fast. You would never do something like that to Honey.
No, of course not. You know, it's the timing. It's always interesting here because the girlfriend's leaving to work, but it worked out that she was able to escape, so right before we started the show, so that, I think Honey should be all right. But the mailman is liable to come now, any moment now in the next half hour or so. So, I'll be ready to hit that mute button. But no, obviously excited for the bank today, D, and the Wyatt Wheeler conversation. You've been hyping up this one to me for weeks. You've kind of labeled this as like the Brian Windhorst covering LeBron coming up. So I have high expectations, and just hearing about Cantwell's kind of his athletic journey, in a sense that Wyatt, from what we know, has a very good understanding of, and the person as well, right? So he's seen him and this recruitment from different angles. He's not the national recruiting reporter who is going to sit there and try to say, well, this is what his NIL offer was. Like, he has a real understanding of the full process. So excited for that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talked so much, and we will talk with the bank about kind of the next 5-star, the next 4-star, whatever it is. Sometimes it's nice to sit back and appreciate the ones you got in the boat. And there is none bigger than the #1 overall player in the country on the composite, on the industry rankings, you name it. Jackson Cantwell, the #1 overall player in the country out of Southwest Missouri. So looking forward to that conversation. But Pete, let's jump right into it. So I posted the bank on CanesInSight.com, which is, as we all know, 7.44. Now it's at 7.46 million. So we got a bunch over the weekend, almost at 7.5 million post and counting. There you go. There's the bank, all for free. Put it out every week, just like we do on the show. I'll write it up, put it up on the board. A lot of discussion there. It is the #1 Canes community on the planet, all for free on CanesInsight.com. Question from Bob before we get into the bank, with a very good question, which is, what's the difference between the composite ranking and the other ranking? So every recruiting service does its own ranking. So 247 will rank, and they caused a lot of controversy when they dropped Jackson Cantwell to like number 10, I think. Pretty good ties were complaining about the number 10 overall player. But On3 will have their own ranking. Rivals will have their own ranking. ESPN will have their own ranking. So what ends up happening is they all kind of compete to see who can be the closest on when the guy gets drafted to where they're projected. First of all, if they're 4 stars or 5 stars, which means that they're draftable, then how close are they to kind of their ranking? So 247 traditionally has been the best. I know when Barton Simmons did a great job for them, now with Nick Vanderbilt. The last draft On3 was by far the closest in terms of like the putting the ranking next to the player. So they kind of taken the lead there, but it's draft to draft. So 247 can take it next time. Rivals, ESPN, who knows? So composite ranking or industry ranking, with On3 calls, is really the same thing. Is just taking all the rankings together and then averaging them out to see who ranks where. So I like to use that one as like kind of the official recruiting ranking, because it's everybody. One site might have Jackson Cantwell 10th, one might have him 1. But if you look at all the rankings together and you rank all the players based on their average ranking on all the sites, Jackson Cantwell is the #1 overall player in the country, which to me means he's the #1 overall player in the country.
And D, not to confuse people too much, but I believe On3 and Rivals are merging now too.
Right.
on
That's
July
gonna be
1st. So like they're going to have a different ranking system as well. So we'll see how that changes.
Yeah, but it's interesting to watch. I like watching the draft and seeing kind of how close. I think the recruiting rankings have gone way better. You look at the draft last year, aside from like the Cam Wards or guys like that that transferred a lot, um, and really came out of nowhere. Most of the guys were blue chip players. Um, you're talking about blue chip linemen all across that draft, offensive, defensive, blue chip receivers. So the draft's got a lot more linked to the recruiting rankings. Not perfect science, but it's gotten a lot closer. Oh, one more before we get to the bank. Clutch is asking any take on Wisconsin getting caught tampering after all that crying. Yeah, Wisconsin getting caught with recruiting violations after all the complaining they did about uh, Xavier Lucas. Still waiting to hear about that lawsuit. I'm sure they're working on it as we speak. They're just proofreading it. Yeah. So let's go. Let's get the bank.
Let's get into the bank, man. Yeah, let's get into the bank as we got Wyatt coming on at 9. So we want to make sure that we get all this information in. And again, all of this available for free on CanesInsight.com as I pull the article up here, and we'll kind of follow along here. But let's start with James Johnson. Visited a couple weeks ago, and he's a local player from Miami Northwestern, originally from Fort Myers area, but this is a top 10 interior defensive lineman in the country. It looks like Miami's in a good spot for him.
Yeah, if I'm going to like circle the player that I think we're making the most progress on, and meaning real top notch guy, that's James Johnson. He visited Georgia already. He visited Florida already. I believe he's at Florida State now, but as we know, Florida State's kind of a joke. So based on everything I'm hearing, Miami is in an excellent position for James Johnson. They're obviously been recruiting him hard. He's from North Fort Myers originally. Now he's at Miami Northwestern, so he's local. You can get him on campus kind of whenever you want. And they think they're going to land him. Just for some perspective on James Johnson, there you see him right there, big boy. We talked about the shot put. We'll talk about the shot put here with Wyatt Wheeler coming up, but he threw the shot put 60 feet, so he's got a lot of power. The power shows up on tape. You see him there. He's physically ready to compete, long arms, the whole thing, on top of being a very powerful player. There you go with the windmill dunk. So with James Johnson, I just think the opportunity to stay closer to home, the opportunity at defensive tackle, the job that Damian Lewis and Jason Taylor and Mario Cristobal have done recruiting him, the fact that you've kind of gotten past that Georgia and Texas threshold, right? Those guys were the tough competition. I think you're past them. So all indications are that Miami's in a very, very good spot with James Johnson. I like Miami for James Johnson. I think they're going to add him to this class. And if they do add him to this class, you're talking about James Johnson, Tyson Bacon, excellent foundation of your defensive tackles. Two guys from the Southeast, two guys with big time interest from all the top schools. That's what you want when you're trying to build a great class. I would think James Johnson probably more of a nose in this system. I don't know. I haven't asked this, but just knowing how the positions work, I think James Johnson more of a nose, just causing havoc, blowing people up, using his power. Tyson Bacon more of a 3 technique, really living in the backfield. So would be an excellent start. Wouldn't be done at defensive tackle. I think you'd have an excellent start with 2 4-star players, including James Johnson, who, if we're talking about, like on 3, we just had the whole discussion about the recruiting rankings and all that kind of stuff. On 3 has James Johnson as the number 1 defensive tackle in America. So just for some perspective, consensus, talk about industry ranking, composite ranking, top 10 defensive tackle in America would be a huge get for the Canes.
I'm going to jump out of order here, and we'll come back to the order of it here, but I'm going to stick with D tackle because I know the question's probably coming here. Lamar Brown, A&M, LSU, it looks like it's leaning that way. It's been a funky kind of recruitment here down the stretch. He canceled the LSU visit. Then the next day it's back on. Wilt Fong was saying it was never a doubt that it was going to happen. So it kind of looks like Miami's on the outside looking in there. I would think that they stay in contact with him, whatever happens here, just because you don't know what's going to happen with those other situations down the line. But I would say Miami's probably in 3rd there, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't. Here's what I'll say. I don't think that Miami is going to be the pick when the first pick is made. That's not the sense I get. Now, he's kind of a tricky recruit. He's the kind of guy that he could surprise you. So I'm not like extremely confident in saying this, but I wouldn't get too hyped up about getting that first Lamar Brown commit. Now, is there real interest from Lamar Brown in Miami? Absolutely. But this one, and you've seen some of the stuff on social media, it has the feel of something that's going to keep going, right? Yeah. So I just, based on my conversations, I would not expect, and again, I could be wrong. There could be a surprise here. This is just kind of one piece of the puzzle, but I would not expect Lamar Brown to commit to Miami first. I think Texas A&M would be my pick. He just said he's going to visit LSU, so who knows what happens there. But I think Miami will continue to recruit Lamar Brown after whatever his first commitment is, and there's legitimate interest.
Someone that you do feel good about right now is Israel Briggs, the tight end out of California. Sebastian Font interviewed him. Articles up on the website. He was talking about how Miami has obviously the pedigree at tight end. You mentioned in the bank that LSU, who's the other school in the mix here, might be looking at him as more of a wide receiver. Miami looks at him as a tight end who's going to be playing, out wide more as opposed to playing in line and being asked to block. But, some of this stuff is semantics, but it seems like the role that Miami is envisioning him in is something that he's, very interested in.
Absolutely. And I talked to some people there. You see him in the 7-on-7 uniform. I talked to some people that saw him play 7-on-7. He was with Van Spafford, who we'll get to in a second. He was with Mark Bowman, the tight end from California, is committed to USC. Elite players, and apparently he was very, very good in the 7-on-7 scene. I hadn't seen him myself, so that was good to hear that he was very impressive in that setting, because when you look at his high school highlights, which are really good as well, competition is not great, kind of in that Central California, Sierra Nevada to the east, just more of a rural, very beautiful environment, but not necessarily football-oriented, high population. So he returns kicks, receiver, plays defense, takes screens, does the whole deal. And the competition is not that good, but he dominates. But apparently in the 7-on-7 where he's going against, Dade County, Broward County, Atlanta, California defensive, like Southern California defensive backs, apparently he's done very, very well in that setting as well. So there's a lot of optimism on him. He's going back to that composite ranking that we were asked about earlier. He's a top 10 consensus tight end in the country. Miami loves him. They think he's extremely athletic, extremely dangerous as a receiver. They don't think he's like a wide receiver. They think he'll eventually have enough weight to be a tight end, not a inline block people up, nose to nose tight end, but somebody who can, play as that big detached tight end. And he's got a lot of athletic ability. He commits next week. So a week from today, which is Tuesday, he will be committing. Miami LSU are the finalists. I like Miami to get Izzy Briggs, which would be a top 10 tight end in the class, and I believe a top 100. I think he's number 70 or something on 247. So he's a highly ranked player, highly athletic player, big upside, all the way on the other side of the world, potentially going to the Miami Hurricanes.
So we'll look at the receiver spot now. There's 3 names now, or more than 3 names. There's 4 names, right? And again, I'm kind of going out of order here, but just for the sake of people listening on the podcast and trying to keep things organized, I know how it goes. We'll talk about 1 or 2 guys, and then they'll ask about the others. So, and again, the order we're talking about these players is not the priority or anything, but we'll start, and they all have their own story, right? In their own recruitment, kind of like where they're at, right? But we'll start with Calvin Russell, local star from Miami Northwestern, basketball player as well, has an offer from Miami. You saw him on his visit in the basketball uniform as well. But the optimism is not very high. It doesn't sound like in your update right now coming off of his official visit.
Yes. So some of this is information. Some is just my editorial. So this is my editorial now. I'm not speaking for anybody. This is my impression. I just never got the sense he has a lot of interest in Miami for whatever reason. He's just one of those guys. We've been recruiting him hard. His very close friend is here and thriving with Malachi Tony. I don't know. I don't get the sense he wants to go to Miami. It is what it is. He had a visit. It was fine. I think Miami helped themselves, but I don't sense that he wants to be here. Me personally, based on what I've heard and just kind of been from all sides, right, including the player side. So I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see that one, at least not now. Maybe if Miami has a good season, things change, they'll keep recruiting him. But I would say LSU, for Calvin Russell would be my guess. Which, how does that impact Tristan Keys? Who knows? But I would say, to me, LSU is the favorite.
You mentioned Tristan Keys, and we'll talk about him. Someone who's still committed to LSU, but as we've mentioned many times, we had the chance to interact with him. His interest in Miami is very real. He's made multiple trips down. The Adidas relationship and deal is significant, right? It's not the deal maker, but that one, as you said in the update, it could be a bit of a roller coaster, right? If the sense that I got talking to people was Miami understands that he's going to love everywhere that he goes, and we saw the stuff on social media with him at Tennessee on his visit over the weekend. But I don't think that stuff necessarily overly concerns Miami. But at the same time, they know it's going to be a battle.
Yeah, I mean, Tristan Keys is one that he's a 5-star receiver, so it's a battle anyways. Plus, he's, and I don't mean this in a negative way, because we love this kid. We talked to him. He was one of our favorite people we've ever talked to. But he doesn't shy away from the spotlight. He's very talkative. He's the kind of guy that when you combine him with the attention he's going to get, it's going to be a process that is up and down. Not because he's a flake, not because he's trying to extort people, It's just, this is a high-profile recruit and a high-profile recruitment that likes being high-profile. And I think with something like that, it's just going to be one of those up and down recruitments. Me personally, again, we talked to him. I would love for this guy to be my Hurricane. I think he is exactly what you want. Very smart, very engaging, physically big. The highlights speak for themselves. Cares about football. I love Tristan Keys. So I hope that one gets done. I think that will just be, kind of an up and down deal. He's visited Miami 3 times already, and there's no saying he's not going to visit again. So that would be one I would just keep an eye on. Miami's right in the mix with everybody else. I don't see a favorite amongst that group, and Miami is in that group. So that's how I would put Tristan Keys. It's just one of those you kind of just gotta watch.
So we'll keep it moving at receiver. The comments are already coming in. Where does Miami kind of go from there? And Van Spafford, Jason Lopez, 2 guys, kind of both playing the slot position, different receivers, right? Van Spafford committed to Georgia, but looking like things are really trending Miami's way there. So let's talk about those 2 guys. Again, as you've mentioned for the last few weeks, would both be takes if they both wanted to commit to Miami right now. Now, does that mean that they're both, as you said the other day, going to kind of look at each other and say, man, we might be playing too similar of a role in this offense that it might be best for us to go, to different places, but they would both be takes, as you've mentioned.
Yeah, I think so. People are going to put them in the same bucket just because of their melanin levels. But they're both major takes, and I think, and different types of players as well. Lopez is going to be here next weekend, really this weekend coming up here. Miami love to get him. We talked about before, basketball to me is the one. We got to figure that part of it out. I think he could play on this basketball team and help the team get better. And certainly football would love to get this guy. So we'll watch.
Can I speculate for a second with no info whatsoever, as we got to keep things moving because we have Wyatt Wheeler joining us in a few minutes here, D. But I wonder if the sense is that Calvin Russell ends up kind of drifting away from Miami here, if a scholarship opens up on the basketball side.
I like
that would go to Jason Lopez. But that, and I've just, again, speculation, I've just had a hard time believing that there'd be 2 spots that Jay Lucas would bring in for football players that can play at this level and have a role, I think, somewhat on this level. But that's my speculation on that one. But Let's keep it. Let's keep
No,
it.
and by the way, listen, and I've been
going.
saying I love your speculation. I know we got to keep it moving. I've been saying this since the beginning. This is not a new thing. I really do believe the best receiver in South Florida is Jason Lopez. My personal opinion. For college football, my opinion is the best receiver, and definitely high school football. The best receiver in South Florida is Jason Lopez. That's my opinion. Obviously, with Calvin Russell, you recruit him like crazy and you prioritize him because of the upside. I heard he's a good kid, so that gives you a better feeling the upside. He can be an NFL X, which we haven't had and we've needed, right? But for me, as far as like who would if you ask me right now, you have to make a bet. Who's going to have more yards in college at the P4 level? I would bet on Jason Lopez over pretty much everybody that I've seen. Maybe not Tristan, but pretty much.
I
everybody.
just dropped a link here of a show that I did like 30 minutes just on. It was a prospect spotlight just of Jason Lopez, showing his highlight, his basketball stuff, and everything. So
I got good numbers too. That was a good show.
Yeah, it was a fun one. So wrapping receiver up, Tyron Evans to Tennessee commit.
Sorry, Vance Spafford. I should mention Vance Spafford.
Talk about
Georgia put out, which kind of reflects what I'm hearing. Excuse me, that if Vance Spafford gets down to Florida to Miami, which he's scheduled to be this weekend, they don't see him in the Georgia class. He's committed there now. I'd agree. I think if he's down here, we're gonna have a great chance to flip him. And I've not heard anything other than he's visiting. So if you see Vance Spafford on campus, very good chances in Miami Hurricane. And again, I expect that to be the case, but it's recruiting. We'll see. Top 100 player in the country on the composite.
Tyron Evans, he's a guy who has some ability on the outside, 6'3", 200, committed to Tennessee, and they want him to stay in the class. So it's not like they're kicking him to the curb.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tennessee's on Tyron Evans hard. Miami's on Tyron Evans hard. He's one where I think he's like a low 4-star, maybe high 3-star, but the interest from both Miami and Tennessee is extreme. Both love the guy. He's listed like at 180 or something on 247. I heard he was 200 on the visit and looked like a good looking 200. So big receiver, productive, out of the North Carolina area, Charlotte, and just a very, very talented player who Miami has a good shot of flipping. It's not a guarantee. It's going to be a battle between Miami and Tennessee, but that's a real battle. That's not like, hey, he's a backup plan for A or B. He's a priority for both schools, and Miami's going to try to get that one done.
Running back position. Again, if you're just tuning in now, all of this is available on the bank for free on CanesInsight.com. Running back spot, some interesting stuff going on there. Derek Cooper, of course, big time 5-star, local guy, absolute must get in this class. You have Jay Lamar, who's coming off his visit. Miami seems like they've made a good move with him. Javion Mallory from West Boca has been committed for a bit now, but kind of messing around with Alabama here.
Yeah, here's what I know on running backs. Derek Cooper's is an extreme priority. He's one of those guys that's like a Jackson Cantwell, right? He's on a pedestal about, you got to get this guy. I keep hearing Miami's in a good position to get Derek Cooper. They're trying to get that one done. Mallory's visiting Alabama, or did visit Alabama, even though he's committed to Miami. That's not something Miami loves. Miami had Jay Lamar on campus, top 10 running back in the country from Moultrie, Georgia, Colquitt County, as I learned yesterday. Great player, great interest there, great shot to flip Jay Lamar. So now it's kind of a balancing act, right, between these three. I don't know how the balancing act ends up, other than I expect Cooper in this class, and I think we get 2. Beyond that, we'll see, but those are the 3 names in play. One's committed, one is very high in Miami interest, and then Derek Cooper, again, a guy that I think is trending to Miami that Miami really, really wants bad.
Breck Colajay, offensive lineman from IMG, visited a couple weekends ago, coming off a Georgia visit. He's checking out USC and then Tennessee, and then could be making a decision, sometime here in the summer.
Yeah, one of my favorite players, one of everybody's favorite players, man. This guy's a stud. So Breck Colajay visited Miami, looked like he was about to commit, but he said he wanted to go through his process, was bonding with Jackson Cantwell. Jackson Cantwell kind of pushed him to commit, and he said, listen, my process is different than yours. Let me go through it. But I think it's a similarity in that Cantwell did a million visits. Even after he was leaning to Miami, ultimately signed with Miami, but Cantwell did not, he didn't skip a visit, right? He visited everywhere, most places twice, 3 times. So I think Colajay is a similar process, very professional process. His family he comes from professionals. They travel for work. So I think just this whole thing about going to schools and stuff, it's like, to them, it's not a big deal. I don't think it's kind of like part of life. So he'll visit Tennessee now on the weekend. He visits USC during the middle of the week, where his teammate Kenye Pepe is going. So USC is a real team there. But I think the amount of times he's visited Miami, the repeated visits, the bond with the Cantwell, the bond with the coaches, the priority Miami's put on him from the beginning, I think we'll get Brett Kaloje when it's all said and done. And look at the schools he's visiting, man. This guy is no joke. This is a big-time player, national interest, a legitimate national stud.
Let's talk about linebacker real quick. J.J. Edwards, Tamarion Watkins, two names to keep an eye on. Edwards, the Rutgers commit, was on his visit last weekend, and then Tamarion Watkins from Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Yeah, J.J. Edwards, kid from Orlando, had a great combine. Ran, I think, 4.6 or something like that. Good film. We watched his spring film the other day, Pete. We're very impressed there. He's a rising guy we evaluated and liked. He committed to Rutgers like before he visited Miami, then still visited Miami. So kind of an interesting process there. And Rutgers really wants to keep this guy. They're tired of losing guys to Miami. But Miami loved him on his visit. It wasn't one of those visits where they didn't like what they saw. They loved what they saw with a J.J. Edwards, and they're going to keep trying to flip him. I think they got a great shot to flip him. That'll be a little process there, but I think that's something to keep an eye on in terms of the linebacker class. I asked about other linebackers, and the name that I was pointed to was Tamarion Watkins, who is a kind of safety / linebacker, let's say a James Williams type body, but more openness to playing linebacker he is from Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is right there it's in South Carolina, is right there by Charlotte, where a lot of kids we're recruiting are from. He visited for the first time as an OV. So he's unlike most of these guys. He did not make a spring unofficial. He made his official visit, loved it. He is visiting South Carolina this weekend. South Carolina is the crystal ball favorite. Obviously, South Carolina does a great job recruiting that area. If he goes to South Carolina and doesn't go head over heels, I think Miami's gonna have a great shot in him. But that's a legitimate visit, right? Local. They do a good job recruiting that position. So that's one where if he goes to South Carolina and he commits, or the crystal balls start rolling in, that we got to move on. But I think if that's one where Miami could survive and keep communicating with him, maybe getting back on an unofficial, they're going to have a shot there. That one's alive.
All right, D. Well, before we wrap up the bank recruiting updates, we have our guest backstage with us here. So I'm going to bring him in right now. Wyatt Wheeler joining the show right now. And he's the I don't know if this is self-proclaimed. I'm saying it's self-proclaimed, but on his Twitter bio, it says the best looking sports reporter at the Springfield News Leader. So again, it's in his bio. Didn't have quotation marks around it. So
yeah, when you're the only one, you can start calling yourself those things. I think a lot of people would say the worst looking one, and has for me as well. So yeah, that's what we go with.
Well, Wyatt, man, thank you for joining us, man. I've been excited to have you on. Kind of watching your coverage of Jackson Canwell, which was by far the best coverage of anybody, including recruiting writers. You were the one that I watched the closest. Watched that long interview you did with him on that football field, right? That's when I saw that one, when I kind of like, all right, now I see why the coaches are confident they got a chance here, because he definitely sounded all Miami in that interview. Even as other sites were reporting different things, you kind of had the real deal there. So before we get into Jackson Cantwell and your relationship with him, tell us a little bit about yourself and the place you're from.
Yeah, I've been down here in Springfield, Missouri, which is the bigger city that Nix is right next to, for about 10 years now. Covering a bunch of high school kids, covering Missouri State University, which is moving to Conference USA this year, and just a ton to do right now. But yeah, they just when you find a kid like Jackson Cantwell come along, that's somebody you cover extensively. The area had Dorial Green Beckham back in 2012, and #1 recruit and everything, and it was just kind of a frenzy when he was here. So we had a similar thing with Jackson down here, and you add all the track stuff in there as well. And he's as big as it gets in the area. So that was it's been a ton of fun to cover.
Wyatt, just so like people understand. So by the way, Missouri State, I feel like I know more about Missouri State than most because one of our buddies, a writer for our website, Lance Roffers, who I know you're in contact with, he's a big Missouri State guy. So I always hear about that lefty outfield. It looks like he's going to be a first round pick out of there. So shout out to Lance. But for those because look, a lot of Florida people on this show, a lot of people who maybe have never been to Missouri. I had never been to Missouri. That's on my list. But like people might think it's like haystacks and stuff. It's an urban environment. Like what tell us about Southwest Missouri, particularly Springfield, Nixa, for those who are not familiar with the area.
Yeah, I've listened to a few of your broadcasts before, just listening to how you guys talk about Jackson and some of the hype around there. So I have heard you guys talk about how this is just the sticks and everything.
I didn't say that. It's very different than Miami.
That was definitely him because I don't make those generalizations.
It's an unusual place for us to get players.
Oh yeah, no. It's I've laughed a little bit but this is kind of an urban area. Nix is up and coming, just kind of it's going to overtake everything down here eventually, just because of the money that's going in there and a lot of people moving out there. But we do have Branson down the street, I'm sure, which is where you can generalize a lot of those things when that's just kind of a hillbilly tourist destination where you get all the country shows. But with Springfield, Nixa, just their surrounding cities are a little more urban than you'd think. Good small town, good people, and it's been improving in football over the last several years, and but nothing remotely close to what Jackson's been. So it's a good urban area.
Wyatt, when was the first time you heard of Jackson? And we've talked about how you've been covering him for a while now, and he's still as young as he is. He's still 16, right? So obviously, you've been covering him for a while. He's 16. You must have heard about him when he was pretty young. So talk to us about that and just kind of like how you've seen him grow and mature into becoming the number one recruit in the country. Yeah.
So before his freshman year, I started hearing about him. When you hear about a 6'8" incoming freshman with the size and athleticism and the genetics he has because of his parents, that's when you send the football coach a text saying, I need to talk to this kid. And a lot of coaches will be hesitant to give you a freshman sometimes before they play a game, and this coach is as good as anybody in the area, and he's just like, get down here, you got to meet this kid. So it was about 3 years ago, before his freshman year, where we're sitting down on a bench at Nixa High School, and we just talked for 20 minutes about, and it's hard to keep a conversation with some kids for that long when they haven't done too much interview stuff. And always just an extremely bright kid, just humble, just going through every little aspect of just extremely detailed. You guys have heard in his interviews, just if you ask him one thing, he'll expand on it and just kind of find all the intricacies and small little details, and just trying to how he can be better in some of those things. Before his freshman year, got to know him. He had a 33 in his ACT because he got bored one day during the summer, decided to teach himself some things, and I went and got a 33 on his ACT, and it's just like, this kid's just nuts. So was able to write that story, just introduce him to the area in a way, because you figure this kid's going to be 4-star, 5-star with those measurables someday, to where we're going to be talking about him a lot. Had a feeling that something like this could happen. So just watching him, he starts the third game of his freshman season because the offensive lineman got hurt. You can't take him out once he's in there. And he's always been, I remember before his freshman year, his football coach took him to a camp over at Oklahoma State just to try to get his feet wet, get him used to it. And he was horrible that first day is what they said. And then he goes back to the dorm room, a hotel room, wherever they were staying. And he just kind of breaks down everything, trying to just figure out what he can improve on and all that. And then the next day he comes out and dominates everybody. And that's kind of how he was that first game the first game of his freshman season, struggled a little bit against a state contending team. Rest of the year, he's dominant. Sophomore year doesn't allow a sack. Junior year doesn't allow a sack. And then he just blows up into this recruit that we figured he could be. And really, he hasn't changed since. Those conversations I've had since that freshman year. Still the same kid and everything. He's just the same humble kid that has had more attention than any high school kid we've ever had down here. And he'll make some jokes on Twitter, which has been fun to watch when people give him a hard time, but just the same kid. And I've enjoyed getting to know him and his parents tremendously.
Yeah, I talked to a buddy of mine who's actually from Missouri, and he was telling me that Southwest Missouri is actually known for throwers. For whatever reason, it's like there's like a lot of people. It's like I don't know, there's a community down there, or it's just strong kids that's a throwing area. At least when he would go to track meets from a different, he was from the St. Louis area. So, what is that true? And just like the throwing aspect of what Cantwell brings to the table, you having seen not just his football career, but his throwing career, put that in context for Miami fans, just how special he is in that sport.
Yeah, just 3 of the top 4 state finishers in our largest class were from the area. His best friend has been finishing second behind him every single year. So when Jackson early enrolls next year, it'll be nice for that kid to get the first place finish that he had. All these kids had to accept pretty early on. We're playing for second, and I went to that state track meet just to watch the spectacle of, I knew Jackson was going to impress, but I wanted to hear how everybody else treated him. And it was like a rock star, man. It just like hearing a kid like gasp when he walks by and be like, oh my God, there he is. And he's like, I'm starstruck. And I look at it and I was like, he's just this goofy kid, man. You don't have to be that starstruck over him, but he just has that way, that pull within him that a lot of people just are in awe when he walks by, and then he almost throws the shot put out of the little shot put venue that they have. So it's funny. One girl brushed his arm and said, oh my God, I touched him. And it's just like that. That's just kind of the way that it's just kind of the legend that he's been able to grow around here. And he's just dominant. I mean, he's standing there warming up, and his warm-up throws when he's not even spinning are going further than the second place finisher. And people are taking their phones out to watch him stretch before. And it's kind of weird just getting to know him, that, he's a 16-year-old kid, extremely young for his class, which I'm sure you guys have covered a little bit. Just how much attention goes, just, he really could be he could be a sophomore if his parents decided to have him in that class. But he's going to be extremely young when he gets into college, 17-year-old kid whose birthday lands in the second semester. So that just makes him that more attractive, and just shows that ceiling's even as high as it is. But the track stuff has been fun to watch, getting to know his Olympian parents, as good people as you could be around. And when you get your first eyes on Christian walking around and seeing how big he is, and you'll understand what you'll see somebody a little bit bigger than Jackson a little bit, to where that you'll understand where he comes from and why he's been able to turn into what he is.
You mentioned his parents, so I wanted to ask about them because just kind of watching this process from afar. I was, as a Miami fan, like, are they going to be with him going to a place like Miami, was so far away, that is not as established as Georgia right now in terms of where they're currently have been as a program. But at the same time, they've been around the world, right? Given their background. So, can you talk about just his parents? You're dealing with them and kind of their impact on this whole process.
Yeah, Christian and Terry are great. From everything I heard, they let him make his choice. I don't know. I don't know if Miami would have been their first choice, and I don't say that to say it wasn't. I don't know what theirs was. They were really hands off and letting him make his decision, and they know he's going to break down everything and make the most informed decision possible. As we saw when he decided to delay his commitment by a few weeks. I'm sure it had everybody's head spinning on where that was, or what that could have meant. But it was really just because he wanted to gather more information, and he still lands on Miami. So it's those two are as good as it gets. I think it sounds like that they're looking for somewhere to live. Just kind of away from Springfield area, still in Missouri, whether that's getting back up to Columbia, where Mizzou's located, getting on Lake of the Ozarks. But, they didn't, I think everybody in the state just assumed Mizzou, just because that's where the dad went, and they've had some NIL advantages with some state laws and everything. I thought that was probably the favorite for a lot of it until probably throughout his junior year, when he started to like Miami a little more. I listened to Mike Ryan on the Levitard show, so I know how good the Mirabal Cristobal combination is. So that always made sense to me. And a lot of people would DM me like, "Why are you thinking Miami has a shot at this?" It's just like, they're building, they're coming up, and it's the combination of those two is going to have them in this until the very end. But no, they'll be at games. They'll make sure they fly out to everything. They're well off to be able to get there, but I think they'll be a little hands off, and we'll go support him wherever he is.
So, one thing with Jackson that it catches my attention from just you going through is, freshman year, kind of having bad outings at a camp or a game or whatever, and then coming back and just completely dominating. I know Under Armour was my first exposure to him, and it didn't really play to his strengths because they weren't run blocking, letting him just like demolish people like we know he could do. He had a pass block. He was going against like guys that, are the best anywhere in the country. So just kind of the pass blocking development, right? How much did his team pass block, and you seeing his trajectory and kind of the ups and downs, maybe the more that others have seen, including the bounce backs, right? How do you see his pass blocking developing at the next level?
Yeah, they haven't had to do too much of that, and of course the competition here is way lower than what he's seeing at the Under Armour. I mean, they were a run first, they're a run first team. The offensive line they have down here, even if he wasn't on it, it would be one of the best. It would be the best one in the area. It's just a bigger offensive line than you're used to seeing. You throw him in there, and it's run behind him the whole game, and they're running for. They end up in the highest class state championship where they finish as runner-up. They go up against some Division I recruits, so he's seeing more better guys throughout the year. So that'll be a process. I think just because they are run blocking so much, he is putting people in the turf all the time. They have a good quarterback that I hope that they let him pass block a lot more this year, just because they have some questions at running back, and their quarterback just got his first FBS offer. So they do have some things to where that might be more practice this year, but he's still not going against those top level guys. So, he's dominating the kids in the area, but he's going to see some different athletes once he gets up there. So that will be something to watch. But there's the way he adapts, the way he breaks down everything. If you ask him out again after the game how he thinks he did, he'll start critiquing his hand placement. Just saying that he should have been a little lower, should have been under the pads, should have been this or that. So he's thinking about it the whole game, and he's one of those guys where you can just point back to one play and he'll tell you what he did wrong or how he could have done a little better. So I don't have any doubts that once he gets up to that next level where he's around this best combination of offensive line coaches in the country, that he'll be able to quickly adjust. And, he might have some struggles early on, but he'll turn in. But I always tell people he's going to turn into that first gold medalist throwing first overall draft pick that cures cancer, just because he's that type of genius, that type of athlete. So he's he'll be an adjustment period, but I don't doubt he'll get better and start excelling at that pretty quickly.
Wyatt, I'm curious, from what off-field interests, it doesn't seem like a guy who really is into the TikTok and the social media. Like he does it, but it seems like it's more because it's almost like business. You see him with the First Form nutrition deal and stuff like that he posts it, but it doesn't seem like he's your normal 16-year-old kid, right? Even a lot of these top recruits, right? They have a lot of other interests. I'm curious, from what you know about him, is it all ball, all weight room with him?
Oh, you got to throw weight room in there. That's for sure. That's you showed the benching videos here earlier, and before his sophomore year, I went out and watched him work out just because that was becoming a viral online thing where people wanted to watch that. But I always ask him just when are you allowed to be a kid? Are you having fun with this? What are you going to do now that this recruitment's over? He's just like, I'm going to get in the weight room and I'm going to practice and I'm going to hopefully make some visits to Miami. And he's a focused kid. He's focused on being as good as he can be. He wants to be able to outbench his dad someday, which probably I don't think it's going to happen. I think the arms are too long, and Christian's chest is a little too big for that, to where doesn't really have that. But and he might do it just because he's that motivated. But he's in the weight room a ton. He's just got his license recently, so he's able to make that drive to whatever weight room he wants to be at. He's excited to get in. It's like, what are you going to do this summer? He's like, I'm going to practice with my high school team. And it's just like, I hope you're able to breathe a little bit, because
so he's not playing video. It doesn't sound like he's streaming himself playing video games.
Not streaming himself, but I wonder with some of the things Rosenhaus has been able to land him, if they'll be able to turn some things into more money opportunities for NIL and everything. But he's all over the place trying to. He's enjoying that NIL space. He's enjoying his relationships with some high level representation. But he's being a kid a little bit now. But hopefully, I want to see him enjoy it, because I know how stressful this recruitment process was. I know how everything was a weight off his shoulder, and you could probably find him at the local Waffle House or something during his off time. And he's a funny kid. So I always hope that he's enjoying things.
And then this is pancakes for sure. Go ahead, Pete.
This is my last question for you, Wyatt, and it kind of goes to the back of what you were just saying. How stressful the process was. It seemed like at the end there, he was definitely irked at the narrative coming out of he's only going to Miami because of the money, because of the NIL package, right? And you said you had listened, as we said 2 weeks before the whole thing, that look, it's going to start to come out that Miami is a favorite in this thing, but it's because of NIL. So like, this was something that was kind of building, it felt like, and you being kind of behind the scenes there and seeing how it played out, like that statement he made at his at the presser after the announcement. I mean, just talk a little bit about that and how he kind of probably felt like it wasn't fair that sort of narrative was out there.
Yeah, that wasn't fun. I know the family was annoyed by that. You know, the reports weren't true. Just considering some of the, just the dollar amount and how high it was. Maybe it gets there by later in his career, but it's hard to believe that somebody would throw that much money at a true freshman coming in. So it annoyed them. And that's just you guys covered it. That's a tactic that they use to try to scare them into things. And like I said, a lot of people were in disbelief that Miami could be that favorite for a number one recruit when everybody just assumes it's going to be Georgia, the Alabamas, and just some of those that have been well established over this last decade plus, to where Miami's this up and coming, just kind of resurging back into the national picture right now. Still needs to get in the college football playoff and everything. But if you recognize, just having a number one overall pick in the NFL draft, you recognize just the type of recruiting they're getting and how close they are to challenging in the ACC. You understand why Miami was an attractive option, but Georgia was still able to lean into why Miami's only being able to do this because of the money, because it's just kind of how the reporting's gone on around Miami. And I hate NIL reporting because I find it all so inaccurate sometimes. And, Jackson was impacted by that, to where false stuff was online about him and just kind of painting him as this kid that's going somewhere just for money. So he's smart enough to be able to put in a shot there when just be kind of going at on threes Pete Nakos a little bit, just being able to call him out by name and saying what he did. So the family didn't want that to get as big as it did, and that's just kind of how the recruiting reporting goes. And when he was about to pick, before he decided to delay, I thought it was Miami all the way. I think we all kind of took a step back once he delayed, did another trip to Georgia, thinking that Georgia was maybe starting to be the pick, while also feeling like Miami was still right there and it could happen. But I think that report really bugged the family a bit, to where Miami was the choice. He knows how when you talk to him, when you see that video that I did with him, just kind of breaking down every little thing, it always came down to those relationships. It came down to the high level coaching he could get, and he saw that was better at Miami. And I never questioned that at all for those decisions. Assuming, Georgia's not short on money. Oregon's not short on money. Ohio State's not short on money, to where if they wanted to match or try to get him up to where Miami was offering, I don't think that would have been a problem. But they just felt him slipping, and they put that out there to where they could hurt his reputation a little bit. But he's been fine throughout it. I know he deleted Twitter for a little bit just because of some of the backlash he's gotten from a lot of that, but it's all good. He's going to Miami. He's proud of that. Threw the U up after he won the shot put, came a centimeter short of breaking the national record. But he's great. He's in a pretty good place after that. Happy to have all this off his shoulders.
And why you said something, I don't want to misquote you, so I'm going to ask it again to make sure that I'm getting you right, because it's something I've said and people thought I was just kind of being a homer about it, which is that my sense when all that came out about the NIL was that people inside of Georgia, because they, like you said, maybe felt the relationship slipping away a little bit, as far as, him really believing what Mirabal and Cristobal were telling him about his future there, that they would leak that out about the NIL, because that would create a narrative that if Cantwell chose Miami because he thinks Miami has the best chance to develop him as an offensive lineman, my editorializing being that Georgia didn't really have a very good offensive line this year. Miami had a much better one. That if he chose the football decision for his own development to go to Miami, everybody else would think it's all NIL, and that would dissuade him from picking Miami because of the narrative. Am I characterizing that accurately? I don't want to misquote you or what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't have that word for word from what the family believes. But I when Jackson goes up there and says pushing a narrative that Pete Nakos had, I mean, it sounds like he's talking about just the NIL and everything that came out, because that's the report he made, and he knew how that was going to be characterized. Whether it was on the Georgia side, and they love Dan Lanning, and they had that last trip to Oregon right before, but they had good relationships everywhere, and from talking to him afterward, from talking to his dad and parents a few weeks after that went on, after the decision was made, they still talk highly of everybody that they had. Those coaches are still going to try to have those relationships, because we live in this transfer portal world to where they want to be able to have that just in case Jackson does decide to go into portal or change his mind. So, I mean, it's not like everybody's backing off and saying, oh, our relationships are bad. They want to keep those relationships. Georgia, I know, was in town. They actually had breakfast with Jackson at a Waffle House days before the commitment. So, I mean, that's maybe they felt that they put in those last second pushes, whether it was getting him on campus one last time, having him delay his commitment, whether it was flying down days later to have breakfast with them. But it just seems like when that came out, when it did, and just kind of hearing Jackson's words when he's calling out a reporter, that's where it just all makes sense and lines up with everything, to be like, somebody put that out there just to mess with his reputation a little bit, maybe mess with his head, and make a different commitment. But when that kid makes a decision based off of where he feels like he developed best, this, and that, that's what he's going to do, because he's a smart kid. That's just what he's going to decide. He's not going to let anybody bully him out of it. So Miami it was, and I think it was a great decision. You'll see a first-round pick out of there off that offensive line this upcoming NFL draft. And I'll be the biggest fan of Jackson Cantwell in Miami until he's the next first-round draft pick. So just really hoping that happens.
I got one more question, and you've been very generous with your time, but we got the best looking reporter at the Springfield News Leader. We can't waste our opportunity here. So the last question I have is just his track career, right? So he has an opportunity to come back in high school and break the national record, most likely. But of course that would conflict with spring practice. My understanding is he's probably going to come to Miami early. That's what he's been saying. Is that still the case? And if he does decide to, okay, I'm not going to finish my track career in high school, I'm going to Miami, do you see his track career ending? Do you see him maybe revisiting it down the road after he's a little more comfortable? Like, where do you see his track career going from here?
He's said different things at different points. I think he was really excited after he had that throw at the state championships here recently, to where he came up a centimeter short of one of the records. That wasn't the main record that Michael Carter set, but it was a centimeter short of one of the national records in high school competition. But I think he was really excited when he's like, maybe I'll rethink early enrolling. But I think he wants to play as quickly as he can in that semester of practice and getting in there. And I think his excitement just to get down to Miami is going to trump everything, to where he's going to get down there and get into practice and everything. And then, once he gets to Miami, I think that he said different things. He said he's been allowed to. He said he doesn't know if he's going to where I could see him skipping and just trying to be as good of a football player, because he understands that's what he's being paid to do. It's what he keeps saying kind of on that front. So It's kind of up in the air. I remember during the Olympics this past summer where everybody was texting me just wondering, is Jackson going to throw in 4 years? Jackson going to throw in 4 years, to the point where I texted him. And he said, he's just replies, he's like, I'll probably throw at the qualifying stuff in 4 years. But if I'm throwing in the Olympics, something went wrong with my NFL career. So I said my NFL, my football career. So he's focused on football. He knows where his future is. And that's his love right now. At track, he said after that track meet that track he fell a little out of love with track because of all the attention he was getting on football. Everything was so football for his recruitment, to where track has kind of taken that backstage. And he's found some love in that again. He'll have he'll have the nationals coming up here in Oregon here in the next few weeks. Forget when those dates were, but he'll be able to go out there and do it again, and maybe get closer to that record. But when I asked pretty early on, when he announced his Final Four the day he cut out the zoo, when I asked his dad, do you think he's going to approach Michael Carter's record? His dad said no, because he's going to early enroll. So it was pretty hard right there, to where I don't think he's going to. I think he'll just be in Miami next come the spring, to where he's trying to get a quick start, trying to start as a freshman.
All right, Wyatt. Well, we'll drop your Twitter link in the description of this show, so that people can shoot you a follow. I'm guessing we'll have some coverage throughout his season as well. So let the people know where to what to expect.
Yeah, I have some ideas that I want to do. When you have this type of kid, I've loved my relationship with him. He's just an awesome kid, awesome family, to where I'll be the biggest fan of him for his entire career. So I'm very excited for him. So I'll be covering him. Twitter, Wyatt Wheeler _NL, news-leader.com is where I write all my stuff. So have some ideas of some different fun stories I want to do with him. And I'm sure he's sick of me by now, but we've had a lot of fun, and just really looking forward to watching this senior year, and hopefully bringing the U back to where he's competing for national championships and being a high NFL draft pick. So one of my favorite kids, and I'm very excited to see where he ends up.
I have one suggestion or something I want to see. I want to see you try to keep up with him eating the same meals that he's eating in a day. I want to see what his nutritional regimen looks like, man. I'm sure he's eating a lot of calories, man. I did
that with the first story I wrote on him. I asked about I asked about his food, and he said he'll come home and his parents will have steaks ready to go. He'll get in the car. He'll get in the car and he'll go with his dad to just after a practice, after a workout, and his dad will just stop by and order a large pizza for him to eat. So that nutrition is crazy, and I might need to update it and just see what they have him on. But I asked him, so what do they want your body to look like? What do they want your size to be at when you get down there? And he's like, I'm pretty much there right now, 6'8", 320. And it's just like, you're a freak. And so he'll keep that up. He's an animal. So I want to ask about that again.
I think Miami coaches will defer to the Olympian parents whose roof he's living under right now. So I don't think that they're going to need to adjust anything much before he gets to campus, man. But no, Wyatt, it was awesome talking to you. Great getting the insight on Jackson Cantwell from you. Again, as Danny said here, you've been covering this better than anyone, and excited to see your coverage throughout the rest of the season. And we'll hopefully have you on back again, maybe midway through his senior year here.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. You guys do a great job. You guys have been good to Jackson. So excited that he's headed down there, and excited to follow your guys' work when he's there, and hopefully a long career after he's at Miami.
And we know now, Springfield, not the sticks. It's an urban environment, folks. So appreciate you, Wyatt. We'll publicize we'll push all your stuff, man. We can't wait to read it, and we'll make sure everybody else down here gets to see it.
No, you guys are great. Thanks so much.
All right, Wyatt, have a good one. Awesome stuff there from Wyatt Wheeler, and just getting a look behind the curtain, so to speak, of the recruitment and of the player. Yeah, man. Listen, got not only some talented football players out there in Springfield, but obviously a very talented journalist there as well. So appreciate Wyatt for joining the show.
Yeah, no, he's been killing it the whole time. He was the one that I was checking for all this stuff. And yeah, really interesting stuff. I mean, kind of get some insight, not just, it's not just a physical freak we're talking about with Cantwell. It's just the mental is unusual, both from a capacity standpoint and just kind of the way he operates, and the things that he focuses on and the way he's able to lock in. So can't wait what a fascinating prospect. I mean, obviously he's a number one prospect, but he's a unique guy, unique background. Will be interesting to watch him going forward. And we'll be talking plenty about Jackson Canwell. But I got to say, Wyatt not only had a great interview, he gave us the perfect segue, because all that talk about food got me hungry. And when you want to bulk up or slim down, both options are there at Islas Canarias Express, right there in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion. This is a 40-plus year establishment with the best Cuban food in Miami, as authentic as it gets. There you go. There's the Andrade family. These guys win every single award. There you see all the press. Shout out to the whole fam. Full menu. You got 7 different types of croquetas. You want the Jackson Cantwell Cubans and steaks. They got those. They got handhelds to go on the go, pastelitos, things like that, empanadas. If you just got to grab and go to Canos, they'll take care of you. Plus desserts, sweets, you name it, they got it. Kids meals, huge menu, and all of it is good. Cuban coffee, batido de mamey, all that kind of stuff. They got it. I think they got batido de mamey there. They got mamey. Maybe it's just juice. Let's go scroll down. Let's see what they got on the juice menu here.
Mamey shakes, of course, and trigo. The wheat shakes, man, the best. That's how you put that weight on.
That's all authentic, man. That's all authentic. So again, Islas Canarias Express, the absolute best in Miami, which means the absolute best in the world. Check it out and get your Jackson Canwell on. Go bench press after that, so you can get 475 on the close grip.
Johnny Lagoon says Pete and I scored a 20 combined on the ACT. Yep, sounds about right.
You're a Silver Knight Award winner, if I recall.
Not an award winner. I was a nominee.
I see. But yeah, man. So that was awesome. Some recruiting stuff. So we got a bunch of questions here while we were going, and before we get to Miami Hurricane Team Store and Truth and Breeze in the chat. Shout out to Truth and Breeze. Chi-Town asking, and we talked about this a little earlier, Miami's still leading for Brett Kaloje. I think so. A lot of it, not a lot of it, but I think some of it having to do with the guy we just talked about, right? I think Kaloje and Jackson Cantwell, they really want to play together and dominate together. And I think that's something that really is promising as a duo.
Let's finish up the bank D, because we, if you're just joining us now, guys, we did a bunch of stuff before we had Wyatt Wheeler on in terms of the bank that D dropped on the website. I don't know if you dropped it last night or this morning, but we have a few more notes to get to here. Keyshawn Stansel, defensive tackle, and Blake Stewart. I'll go back in order of what's left here. Talk about those two, where Miami stands with them right now.
Yeah, Blake Stewart, the safety from Atlanta, visited unofficially twice, and now the official visit. He is an incredible prospect, really kind of a top of the board kind of guy. Major priority. He's a 4-star, so it's not like he's like a sleeper, but I think he's one that I would say the ranking, which is already high, I don't think reflects where he's at. This is a guy who had a really, really good offseason, 7-on-7, talked to coaches who coached against him with him. They say that he's really, really good. And just a very good offseason. Clemson, who knows a little thing about defensive backs. Michigan, same thing. Both really, really high on Blake Stewart. It looks like it's a Miami-Clemson battle. He already visited Clemson, so we'll see if Miami can get it done. That'll be down to the wire, but I think Miami's going to have a great chance to get Blake Stewart, and he's a major priority for the Miami Hurricanes. Cortez Redding, another safety from Atlanta. I wouldn't put him in the same likelihood as a Blake Stewart, another 4-star guy from Atlanta at safety, but he's in the mix. Kosi Barnes from Greensboro. I don't see that Miami going in that direction. Zion Robinson, the receiver from Texas. I don't see that one. So the other big name we talked about, Keyshawn Stansels, a defensive tackle from Raleigh, North Carolina. He visited Clemson. Clemson got a crystal ball on that visit. Miami thought they were to get him coming out of their visit. So I think this is a situation where he liked both schools a lot out of his visit. Now home stretch, and Miami's going to battle there. I think that's going to be down to the wire. Miami really wants Keyshawn Stansel. Even if they get a James Johnson and a Tyson Bacon, they'd still love to add Keyshawn Stansel.
So the next, did you mention Kosi Barnes and Zion Robinson?
I don't see us going in that direction. Truth over falsehood, asking why you think we're such a kryptonite to elite level receivers. Think that'll change anytime soon. I mean, we're in the mix for some top guys, including the number 1 guy. He's visited 3 times. So we'll see how that one goes. My opinion,
you haven't had a high draft pick, a receiver in a while, man.
Yeah, it's like a cycle, right? When you don't have the high pick, the high recruits don't want to go because they don't see themselves being a high pick. You just got to break through. I mean, again, Jeremiah Smith was here. So when that didn't happen, it set you back, because if it did happen, you would have been in great shape. So on the both in terms of, you'd have the best player in the country on your team, as well as having a guy that other guys could look to going forward. So you lose that, that hurts you, but we'll see. I think Tristan Keys is the one I'd love to see us get. I mean, not only is he the number 1 receiver in the country, I could see him thriving here. To me, he's the kind of guy you go all in on, but he likes everything that he goes on. He's one of those guys. He's going to have a very eventful process, is kind of the Tristan Keys thought I have, but we'll see.
And then the defensive linemen, or pass rushers, I should say. Let's talk about them a little bit. Jaquez Wilkes, Nolan Wilson, Ashari Charles going to be visiting this upcoming weekend. And you would imagine, I don't know if it's going to be this weekend that it happens, but you at least are going to land, 1 or 2 of those guys. And then, of course, they're big game hunting with Bryce Perry, Wright, and Anthony Jones.
Yeah, I think defensive end, probably the best position in terms of the depth chart right now. Young guys, old guys, they feel great about that position. They feel great about what they put in to the room. Multiple 5 stars, room being projected first-round pick. That's the position that's also very good on the board, where guys have legitimate interest in Miami. So you've already had Anthony Tank Jones from Mobile, Alabama visiting. He's got legitimate interest. Miami Auburn battle for now. Maybe there's another school in the mix, but Miami Auburn, I know, were the top 2 coming out of that visit. Bryce Perry Wright, very good player out of Buford, kind of Ruben Bain style defensive end. Miami, Clemson, Texas A&M, Texas, I believe, are the schools there. That's a battle Miami is in. And then this weekend coming up, you got Nolan Wilson from Picayune, Mississippi, visited unofficially in spring. All these guys visited unofficially in spring, by the way, just to give you an idea of their interest level. Nolan Wilson from Picayune, Mississippi. Jaquez Wilkes from Wadley, Alabama. Jason Taylor visited during the spring over there. He also visited again himself during the spring. That's the one that doesn't get talked about a lot, but a top 100 player from rural Alabama that has a lot of Miami interest. Who's the third one from this weekend? Ashari Charles.
Ashari Charles, yep.
Yeah, another 4 stars, visited a ton. Miami's got a lot of interest there. So a lot of names at that position. Jonathan Crumbly's asking, is there a reason we're not recruiting Kendall Guerville from Fort Myers? I think we're recruiting him. I just, we didn't get that much interest. Maybe we got on there a little late with Guerville, but there wasn't a lot of traction there. It's not like we didn't like Guerville or something like that. I think there just wasn't that much traction there. If you want to get traction in the household, especially with your old man, whatever father is in your life, just because Father's Day ended doesn't mean that you can't, get a great gift or just get a great deal at the Father's Day. Get yourself a deal, maybe, if you didn't get what you wanted. Go to MiamiHTS.com, Miami Hurricane Team store located across the street from the campus, and you can still get the Father's Day collection 20% off your first item or from the Father's Day collection in total for that deal. Go there right there on MiamiHTS.com. And if you don't want to go from that selection, Just use promo code INSIGHT20, get 20% off your first item. You can use it online. You can use it in the store. Shout out to Harry and Jeremy at the Miami Hurricane team. So it's INSIGHT20 for 20% off your first item.
We have almost 1,500 on here, D. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That was good stuff, man, from Wyatt. Really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, he was awesome. You know, you got the beat writers, the ones that know. They're the ones that like, you know, 247, they got a tough job. And on 3, they got to kind of swoop in, swoop out, right? They're dealing with a lot of kids, right? The beat writers really deal with these kids specifically. So Wyatt Wheeler, awesome. And now that he's a commitment, it's going to be really fun to watch his covers because you're not watching it nervous, right? You're just enjoying the great production and the great stories and stats that come out of there. So excited to watch his career go forward.
Truth Over Falsehoods asking if we think it's harder to recruit uncommitted players or to keep players on your team in this day and age of transfer portal and NIL. I would say keep players on your team.
That's more complicated for sure because you got to balance a million different things, right? The guys coming in, you know, you got to make sure you're not paying the kids coming in more than the best player that you're bringing, that you're trying to keep. There's a lot of the same agents. A lot of times you're not trying to cross problems in your own locker room. It's a mess, man. I think when you hear coaches talk, the thing they really hate about this they hate a lot of the modern stuff, but I think the thing that really coaches hate is recruiting your own players. That's why Larinaga and Paul Damare both retired. Because they didn't want, Gino Damare, because they didn't want to deal with that aspect of it. So that's it, man. Good show today, Pete. A
lot of people, man. And, you know, keep it locked on Canes Insight. Of course, we will have you covered as we got visits coming this weekend. We'll drop the official visitor list sometime in the next couple of days, right, D? And then from there, we will we'll break it down. We'll preview it as we always do, heading it into the weekend. And excited to see what comes of the weekend, man. We haven't seen really. We've had one commitment. Who was it that committed a couple of weeks ago off of a visit? Tyson Bacon, right? So that's been the only one, but we'll see, man. I would expect some guys to pop here in the next 2 weeks. So
stay locked, man. Every single day, like and subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow.
Go Canes.